Hey, it's your boy Chris, Players Pick Podcast, here to shout out my sponsor, Road Roaster Coffee. Road Roaster Coffee makes an amazing array of light, medium, and dark roasts. My favorite is this kick ass right here. You can check out roadroastercoffee.com and use Players Pick as your coupon code for 20% off your very first order. Enjoy the pod.
Players Pick Podcast. Picks and perspective with Chris Johnson. Palpable. Paradox. Polarity. PG.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, buddy. Ryan Meranda on the Players Pick Podcast, episode number 109. It's about time. It's about time. Let's put it that way. Welcome to the podcast, man. For those that don't know, I've talked about Ryan a lot on this podcast through the years. Have all the stories in the world about guitar and going to shows in the early days with Ryan. He started playing guitar shortly before I even started, and he was the one that inspired me. We've got all this history together. And it's about time that I finally had my best bud on the podcast and exposed the world to his music and to his awesomeness. So welcome, bro.
Hey, I'm super excited to be here on my favorite podcast. I mean, what are you going to do? I got my coffee cup all ready.
Oh, yeah. I'm rocking Iron Grizzly. I should have it.
We're both repping.
Yeah, I should have an IXION coffee cup, man.
I looked at having some made, but they'll only let me make white ones, not black ones. So I'm like, that's just not dark enough for my coffee.
Actually, I had some made that were supposed to be black with the podcast logo on it, but it's a white cup with like a black, it's like a sticker on it. It doesn't really actually do the thing that you want it to do. So
that's all right. It still gives us our caffeine intake. That's all we really need.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things, there's so much that we can talk about on this podcast, obviously, for hours and forever. But the one of the biggest things that's going on right now is that you just released your brand new record, Escalation of Arrogance. It was on the 2nd of June. There's I got it right here. Actually, take a look, everybody. You can see the album art here. It's better to see it on Instagram instead of all the flashy reflections that I'm having here. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's like 9 tracks. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
And you've released Reaper's Dawn, which was the first lyric video that went out, and it's up on YouTube right now. And then there's a second one that just dropped, which is the title track, right? Escalation of Arrogance, right? Tell us about why and how this album came to be.
It's just a labor of love, really. It just comes from being a huge metal fan and just years and years of just being impressed and loving everybody else's work, and you just want to be a part of it, really. Everyone has inspired me so much that, I just want to give something back and try to say, here, this is what I've got to offer in the genre and some of my own ideas that somebody might think is cool.
Totally.
I don't know. After some of my last projects, I got to a point where I just wasn't getting the feedback that I wanted. And it just kind of was an odd time for guitar. It kind of seemed like guitar is fading and getting a little less important. And I was really letting it get to me. And I wasn't playing as much and just kind of going through a rough time. But at a certain point, I realized that, hey, even if everything's going to hell, just the joy that you get from making music is its own reward. So that helped me get back into the project, and it just kind of freed me up to just do my own thing and not really worry about kind of the state of the world as much. I mean, obviously I put the state of the world into my lyrics and what I think is important, but just realizing that regardless of what it was going to pay back, I just needed to continue doing my own thing, making my own music and putting myself out there, regardless of what it was going to be. It was just its own satisfaction. So I just started putting together riffs, you know, you just collect riffs for a while and one thing leads to another. And here we are.
Yeah, man. Well, it's definitely your best effort yet. I mean, you know, for those that don't know, Ryan and I started a band back in Seattle basically we started it in 2001 with Jules, and we had no bass player and no vocalist in the beginning, and then we found other members and put together a record and toured a bunch, and then when we split ways and like you went off doing your thing and we did our thing, you started writing and recording solo, like creating all this music on your own and figuring out how to do it without a band, which I find that this is like, it's like you've put so many hours and so much time into like sorting out how to make the drums work, how to like produce and get the layers to sound right and do all this stuff through the years, that this is like this kind of magnum opus of that effort in my eyes, because I know where I mean, I listen to this, I'm like, is it like Golden Fire, like has it's not the same, but it has like the energy of like Living in Truth a little bit, like some of the riffs. It's like the old school Meshuggah meets your kind of brand of thrash, and the riffs remind me, it's like, oh, if Living in Truth from Only Human had like a part 2 or, you know, a future version of it, like some of the riffs like got put in Golden Fire. To me, that's what it kind of sounds like to me. And then I hear all this type of evolutionary stuff, you know, because I've heard you play for all these years, and for you to put all this together in one place and to bring all your influences in, and it kind of really makes it specifically you, because of that. Like, their influencers are there, but there's so much, there's so many that, like, I mean, I could say, oh, that's kind of reminds me of Death, that reminds me a little Metallica, that reminds me of Carcass, that reminds me a little bit of this. But the biggest surprise for me has been maybe like kind of the ways in which you've like what I feel like blended into Eternity into there with the singing and the layering of the clean vocals. Like, not that you ever match that, but it's like you do your own thing with it, and it's very catchy, like when these clean vocals come in, stuff that the previous albums didn't have. So I'm excited about all that. It's a very listenable record.
That's kind of what I was shooting for. I mean, listenable for anyone who can handle Death style vocals in the verses, you know.
Yeah.
Which kind of cuts out a lot of people. But yeah, I think there was just kind of something clicked at a point, and I realized when I was going to do the vocals for this album that is the thing that most listeners connect with. I mean, yeah, we love awesome riffs, we love banging, we love awesome solos and to be fucking dazzled and blown away. But really, I mean, if you don't have that chorus, how much are people coming back, you know? So an album like this takes me so long from start to finish that I have to put myself in the shoes of each job that I'm doing as I go. And when I got around to the vocals this time, you know, all of a sudden, I'm just a vocalist. I'm not looking at the whole thing anymore. I'm just doing the one job. And I was really influenced at the time by a band called Threat Signal. Just awesome vocals, and really cool, clean, harmonized vocal parts. And I'm like, yeah, I want some of that. And then also the newest In Flames, which I don't know how that was generally received, but to me, it's a songwriting masterpiece. I mean,
super good. Yeah.
But I mean, I just saw like a Metal Hammer article or something where they called it In Flames' 11th best album.
Oh.
And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? I'm out of here.
Yeah.
But those influences really shine through. And I don't know. I just don't really ever want to give myself any limitations and be like, I'm a certain genre, and they don't do that in this genre. It's just like I'm trying to grab all the best pieces that I love from all the metal that I listen to, and there's no reason not to include it all.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's part of what this effort also says to me too, is there's an element of branching out further past, previous markers. Like the last couple albums, you kind of perfected the pummeling, the heavy riffs, and even the progressive element has really been a strong theme through the last albums too, where you break away and you end up in a place that is different than the main themes, and you kind of bring it back, which that's something that you and I have loved for a long time through all the different Dream Theater and, subsequent bands that kind of got influenced by them. I mean, Metallica was already kind of doing it anyway before any of those guys were. So there's a certain thing there, but the vocals definitely are far and above, the previous efforts. And because of how much layering and how I can tell how much time you put into like making that shit pop. So
awesome. I'm glad it shines through. Yeah. It's hard to know, I'm like, of course I put in a bunch of extra layers this time, but when you're going through the mixing, mastering phase, you never really know how that vocal blend is going to come out in the end. Like a lot of things get suppressed and a lot of things come out. A lot of my background vocals are a lot more obvious than I kind of expected them to be, but you live and learn, and I'll work on that blend for next album.
Is that like based on like how the mastering affected the final product? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Just because, I haven't mastered myself, and you can read about it and they'll say your guitars get pushed up a lot and you got to kind of anticipate the master when you're mixing, but I'm still kind of new to the whole process. So
I think that's a new song, Anticipate the Master.
Might be a little too close to the new Dream Theater.
Oh, is it? Is there one?
Awaken the Master.
Oh, Awaken the Master. Man, well, that was a sick album. So I mean, I don't know. Yeah, that's a trip, man. I was just talking to Paul Masvidal the other day, and he brought up in our conversation that around this whole feeling of like you spend so much time kind of creating and being in the creative process, ultimately a birthing process, so to speak, where you're just wrestling with all these elements, and then you finally like turn it in, in his case to the label, right? You finally turn it in and they want you to turn around and go right to promoting it and have the energy to do that, and some people get that space, but ultimately what he was looking at was that it's interesting that he doesn't even really know what he did until he's 6 months away from it minimum. Oftentimes it's a year or more, and he's like, man, I don't want to look at reviews for the first 6 months. I don't want to. People can write all they want about it, but I don't want to hear about it because they're not going to understand it. Everyone, a few people might understand it within the first 6 months, but it takes time when you're doing creative things and you're trying to push at least your own boundaries, if not the world's boundaries, but you're pushing your thing into a new territory. So you're bound to have people that don't quite get it. They go, oh, I don't know. It sounds like a mix of these things, and I don't care. They don't actually listen, right? And you have to kind of wait it out, and for enough people to hear it, for the right people to go, oh, I know what you're doing. That's the shit. I hear, dude, you must love death. You must love Heartwork, bro. Yeah, dude, are you a fan of Ride the Lightning? It's like, like, oh fuck, you're the guy, dude. You're like, here, like, let me give you an extra shirt. Like that's the person, right? So I wonder what it will be like. I mean, you can probably speak to that with the other albums, right? Because you have so much distance between you and those previous efforts, right? Like,
well, now that this new one is out, honestly, it's so much better than my previous efforts that I'm just going to kind of pretend that those don't exist. Those are just demos now. That was just practice for getting here.
Fair enough.
Because this was my first album with a Mac and with Logic, and all this new technology. And I didn't know what I was missing. I didn't know how much you could do and how much magic happened in the mixing phase. So it's really like my albums before were still just demos. They didn't get any of the magic. They didn't get any effects and layers and, but speaking to the not being able to understand kind of even your own music, like Paul was saying, it was kind of interesting because, when you work on a project like this for years and years, I'm actually kind of sick of it by the time it's over. And so, I turned it in to be mastered. I got it back from my master. It sounded great. And then I just put it aside because I was still waiting for my album artwork to come in. And I tell you, I didn't listen to my own album for 2 months.
Oh.
While I waited for the album artwork to come in, got everything finished, put it out. Then I was still waiting for the release date. And I pretty much treated it like a fan where I pre-ordered it on iTunes, just to see it on there. And I wanted to see, what the final spacing between songs sounded like, just to the average listener.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I didn't listen to it for 2 months. I waited for the release date and then listened to it on my headphones like a fan when it came out. And it was pretty cool the way that I was actually already far enough away from it to kind of experience it from the outside. And I was like, oh, that song order is kind of good. Like you can kind of judge things a little better once you get a little further away from it. So I understand what Paul's saying in that aspect, but I'm not so afraid of reviews, really. Maybe because I'm not doing things quite so esoteric as he is.
Sure.
His stuff is probably a little more hard to grasp in the whole scheme of things, whereas mine's a little more punch you in the face, immediate. You kind of know whether you like it or not.
That's a good point. I mean, there's a lot more reference points for what it is, what you're doing versus what he's doing. So yeah, anytime you're that far off the map, you're just wide open to randos going, what the hell is this? This is a bunch of robot voice poetry. I don't know what's going on, whereas, yeah, I mean, even though the landscape of metal is super wide with all its subgenre, it's still relatively narrow in comparison to the wide scope of what's possible. So the metal fans they can drop in and go like, oh, okay, it says for fans of thrash, for this, for that. I'm probably going to like it. And then, but we're picky bastards too. So we drop in and we're like, oh, it doesn't have enough double bass, doesn't have enough blast beats. I'm out, I want more grindcore in my death metal, whatever, people are weird, but
it's true. We get really picky. Like there's a lot of bands that I'll listen to because of awesome riffs, technicality. Overall, they're whipping ass, but I'm like, man, I really hate that vocal tone. It's hard to find that perfect blend that is really what you like as a listener. And I mean, I guess that's why we need so many different bands to scratch all the different itches from all the different angles.
Yeah, it's funny because out of everybody I know, you're probably the toughest person to please in that department too. We will always share music and you're kind of like, I'm like, I love this. And you're like, hate it. And I'm like, you're like, I love this. And I'm like, I don't know, it's like, and then every once in a while, we meet in the middle. You're like, oh, but you got to re-listen to the Trivium. And I'm like, okay, man, I'll re-listen to it. Oh shit, actually it's good. I'm glad you made me listen to it because I would have missed it,
No, you make me think of when our buddy Don Wade turned me on to Silosis. And when I first listened to him, I said, they're too perfect. They're too sterile.
Oh.
And he's like, man, you find a lot of reasons not to like stuff. Of course, I since got into Silosis and I think they're freaking awesome.
Great band.
But yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that I think is funny. Finding ourselves in our 40s. I mean, we met in junior high and became better friends in high school. And I, in the early days of music discovery, you don't have as many reference points. You only have your parents and your immediate friends as reference points, especially prior to the internet.
Exactly.
Right. And so we were a lot more open to things too back then. I remember, we'd get random CDs and you'd get hooked on something random. And I'd be like, I don't know why you would be listening to that. And same thing with me.
I mean, because that was the thing. I mean, you couldn't even really preview things before the internet. Like, we literally had to go to Tower Records and judge albums by their artwork, their song titles. And you'd be like, oh, that sounds kind of aggressive. They might be in a genre that I like. And then you'd have to fucking commit and buy the album to even
$17.99, better part of a $20 bill.
It was like, and then it was like the hugest breakthrough when Tower had listening stations.
Ooh, yeah.
Then you had to sit there in the store and preview stuff. It seems so barbaric.
Do you remember I think you remember our friend Frank we made at Camelot Music in the mall?
Yeah, a bit. Yeah. We used to always go in there and talk about discovering new metal bands.
Well, he was the only one in town that had like a dedicated metal section, because you go to the underground, you went to Tower, it was all kind of mixed in, and you had to kind of know, and somebody had to know, or reference, you had to see it in a review in a magazine in Kerrang or something like that. And then go looking for it because so-and-so's brother's cousin's sister said something about the thing that was cool.
Yeah.
So you're there. But when you walked in, I remember that. I wish I knew where that dude Frank was, because I'd love to give him a big ass hug. Because I remember us going in there a few times and buying CDs, and we bought Cynic there. We bought Cynic Focus. One of us did. I don't know. I forget which one of us bought it, but
I still have that CD, so I don't know.
It's probably you, but I think we bought that off of album art alone, and then later found out that Paul was in Death. We didn't have that figured out.
Yeah, no, not at all.
And then I remember we bought I'm pretty sure I bought Testament Low, or maybe you bought Testament Low.
No, I think you got that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember listening to it at your house a lot.
Okay. Yeah. And then it was, it wasn't very long after that the Convergence album from James Murphy came out, and I found that there. And I remember when the very first Slipknot album dropped, and I went in there by myself, and Frank goes, dude, this band right here is going to be huge. And I was like, what? A bunch of fools with masks on? Yeah. Sounds like more aggressive Korn. Okay. Well, fine, I'll buy it. Whatever. And then I would have never guessed that Slipknot was going to be one of the biggest bands still, now, to be honest. But
yeah, you could never see it coming. I mean, it was a weird time for metal when Metallica had gone to the load. And so and then Pantera stepped up, and that's when Phil started saying, the Kings done left you, so we're the Kings now. And they were for a while. And but unfortunately, Pantera didn't even last much longer after that. And then we were just left kind of in a desert of metal. And it was just like, who's going to be the Kings now? And apparently Slipknot was the ones to step up. I mean, shortly after that, Lamb of God, was a serious contender for the throne. And
Meshuggah in the background doing their thing as the badasses that they were, but they don't have the mass appeal that those other bands have.
Still a little too niche, and you needed to really be into the deep cuts of metal to even appreciate Meshuggah back in the day. Of course, now everything's gent.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's that, and that's the kind of the interesting thing about all of that, is that looking back, going like, I can pick out some bands that are influenced by Slipknot, because there are certain little telltale things. If somebody's emulating Joey's style of drumming and a little bit of the production and stuff like that, or if they're emulating the vocals, but it's not like you could be a huge Slipknot fan and never sound like Slipknot. really, you know.
Kind of
But
on the DL, I kind of think that that's what Metallica was trying to do with Saint Anger. They're like,
really,
let's hit that trash can like one of their percussionists,
like their clown. That clown is always hitting that trash can.
and let's not do solos like they don't. Maybe if they would have put
Yeah.
on masks, it would have gone over a little better.
Oh, it's so sad. It's like it's I have such a love like kind of disgust relationship with Metallica. Like I'll never not love them. They're they changed the game forever. It's like they're one of those bands that came along and you're like, nothing would be the same if they weren't around, So we could not have Megadeth and we'd still like kind of almost be the same. Like, I'm not saying that Megadeth isn't good and they haven't changed my life. And I actually prefer most of their music these days over Metallica's, for the last 15, 20 years. But you just can't change. Like, it would just irrevocably change metal.
I mean, it may not be the same now with the kids, but for the longest time, like, you would never find a guitar player, especially a metal guitar player, that wasn't influenced by Metallica. Like, it was like the basic ABCs. That's where you started,
Yep.
and then they'd be the gateway band to get you into other things. But I was thinking about this the other day, how odd it is that, like, I mean, everyone our age would count Metallica as an influence, but it's weird that I don't really think anyone has been able to do what they do. You know what I mean?
Did, so to speak.
Well, I mean, I was still a big fan of Death Magnetic. Man, I thought that was a great comeback.
It's a good record, yeah.
But I mean, think about how many people were influenced by Metallica's style. And then how many good bands did you ever hear that were even in that vein, even reminded you of them? Like, most of the modern new thrash bands that I hear, like, beginning of songs will start kicking ass and you'd be like, yeah, it's got the beat, it's got the riffs. And then they just come in singing like Slayer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I don't want to hear that type of punk, monotone, hardcore yelling. Like, why can't anybody sing a little more like Hetfield? I mean,
yeah, he's very distinct, and there's like, I know what you mean too. I feel like Metallica, especially the first 5 records, so there was so much more patience involved. There's obvious patience involved in the way the structure of the songs and the writing, and like you placing the right harmonies and the progressive elements of that band. You had to have, they were asking for your patience. They're asking for your attention. Like we're going to take you on a journey. And then, but the Slayer attitude and the rest of the thrash element, like you look at Slayer and Anthrax and even Megadeth, being has a little bit of the prog vibe on it, but they never really asked you for the same kind of patience that Metallica asked you for.
Yeah. I mean, they would do some weird stuff, like, think of Hangar 18, where it just switches halfway through and never goes back to the chorus.
Sure.
Like, as a fan, honestly, I kind of hated that, because Hangar 18 had such a cool chorus, but I was kind of mad you only got it a couple of times. But now, as a songwriter and somebody that's like more into progressive elements, I kind of like that they just take off halfway through the song. And, I started doing stuff like that too.
Yeah. Well, that was actually, in a lot of ways, I felt like one of the maybe kind of almost unsaid elements of Only Human when we were writing together back then is like, yeah, we wanted to make punishing music, but we also, at least I know, like, you were more in the realm of like songwriting. I felt like you, as a songwriter, you had more of those elements early on of like trying to have a verse chorus stuff, where when we put stuff together, we made cool riff salads And like we became unafraid of like, okay, it only does these parts like once, and then we just go to a completely different thing, and we're never coming back to that. We pass through this, and we're gonna end up on the other side of the world. Sorry, everybody.
No, yeah, I agree. In Only Human, I felt like our focus was really to be more avant-garde and just to really try to throw people off. Just doing weird stuff by doing things 3 times instead of 4.
One time here.
Yeah, we definitely weren't concerned about the hooks so much as the making you say, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, that's it's kind of like the DNA of taking our love for thrash music, the experimentalism of like Meshuggah Candiria, and then toss in a vocalist that loves Mike Patton and Faith No More, and
yeah,
and we just said, hey, I don't know, we're not vocalists, do whatever you want, and so he just like threw down all these different weird ways.
Well, at the time too, like a lot of bands were doing weird stuff. Like we were listening to the Soylent Green.
Oh, that's right.
And they just straight never repeated any parts at all. They're just like part A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like no hooks, no choruses, no verses. So, I mean, that was like the extreme side of it. So even in Only Human, we felt like we were kind of toning it down. We were keeping it reasonable.
You're not wrong. I kind of forgot about that band. We listened to that. What was the album that we listened to that had all the Art Nouveau on? It was really good. It's kind of like the second or third one. I don't remember now, but
I don't know if it was Sewn Mouth Secrets or it was the one before that. I can't remember. Yeah,
that was a fun era, fun time. Yeah, in comparison to like bands like Dillinger Escape Plan, who came after, and stuff like that. They really set the bar so far out that if you were doing anything traditionally, as a departure if you're just departing from Metallica still, then you're in the kiddie pool still, because Dillinger Escape Plan's like left the universe, like you're like, I don't even, is that music? Oh, okay, there's a riff. Oh wait, no, never mind.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. Man,
just give me something to grab onto, please.
Exactly. Yeah, man, I want to go back to the album, the Escalation of Arrogance, man. That was the one, I think maybe the first thing I mentioned to you by text is after listening to it like first 3 times is like the track listing, the way that you arranged the tracks. I don't know if did you have a feeling as you were writing about the order of tracks at all? Did you kind of, because I thought maybe you had some sort of preconceived notion of like, I need a track 4, I need a track 5 or something like that before, but was that a conscious thought?
On previous albums, it really has been, where I really tried to follow the Metallica formula of having a super fast song first, super fast song last, title track is number 2, ballad is number 4.
Yep.
But this album, I decided to just do the songs and let the chips fall where they may. I just wanted to do something different, more honest and kind of from my own perspective, less trying to emulate anybody else. So I just really leaned into what I felt the songs becoming as they went and the vibes that they had. And I kind of knew that After Death was going to be the album opener. I kind of wrote it to showcase all the different flavors kind of back to back. So you'd get an idea of kind of what was to come. And I made sure that it had kind of an epic intro that was kind of overdone. So it'd be like big enough to be the intro to the album. But initially I did have a different track listing. And then once the songs were getting completed, I'm like, no, it's got to be like this, like this, like this. And it's kind of just how I wanted to unveil the sound to the listener as they're going through it. And, I want to hit them with some rippers open, and then it gets a little more progressive as you get into it. And there's a lot of different flavors on this album. So there was a phase during writing where I'm like, I'm not even sure that all these songs can go on the same album, you know? And so that album order was really important to be like, okay, he established this in song 1. He established this in song 3. Now by the time you're to song 6, you're like, oh, okay, now I understand where all of this is coming from. Where had I opened with that, you'd be like, what the hell is going on? This is too much.
See, that's kind of the nerd side of you that I know so well, is like, because you analyze your favorite records in that way. And like, that's something, those are little gifts and Easter eggs and stuff that I'm sure you've found throughout different albums through the years. And that's been an influence on you. So it's almost like, it feels like, yeah, obviously you're making an album that you want to hear, you know, like that you're trying to make the album the closest to what you would want somebody else to hand you.
That's definitely my main focus. And that's kind of where my blend comes from. It's just because I'm like, oh, I like this over here. I like this over here. I like this over here. And, you know, that's why I lean so much more into singing this time, because of course I like brutal things. You know, it's a flavor that you can't really deny. You need all these different flavors in metal. But for bands that are just brutal, it's like, I feel like you're missing so many opportunities for awesome moments. Whereas bands that blend more sounds, you know, there's just more opportunity for things that, you know, give you chills and make you feel things. As that brutal can really only make you feel one way, you know?
Yeah. And for those that have a hard time with those type of vocals, it becomes it grates on the nervous system unless you're attuned to it, right? So like, that's where I'm at in these days. If it doesn't give me any relief or any reprieve at some point, if there's no release from all the you know, then I'm like, okay, after a while, like my system almost gets overloaded. So you definitely open the door for you know, more listenership by inviting that in. And there's a ton of, almost, I would say, it feels like, without having an exact count, I mean, I'd say at least 50% of the album feels pretty memorable because of that. Like at least 50%, you know, and it's probably a little more. It's probably like 65% as far as like you listen to it once or twice. And then there's these, like, when you have an echo of like a melody, you know, one of the songs sticks out and you're like, oh man, what's that thing? Oh, it's Ryan's song. No.
Yeah. I'm really hoping it's going to be one of those albums where you listen to it the first couple of times and you're like, oh man, that song is my favorite. It's the banger. And then as you listen to the song, as you listen to the album more times, you'd be like, oh, now a different one's my favorite. And listen to it further and you'd be like, oh, now a different third one is standing out to me as you get more used to it. I love albums like that. Like Children of Bodom's Follow the Reaper.
I remember.
Man, as I listened to that album, literally every song on that album was my favorite song on the album at some point. I'm like, oh no, dude, it's fucking this one now. And
didn't you get that album when we were living on Corliss with Kimsey?
Yeah, that was one where I was working at a pizza place and I was closing the pizza place and I was in the back office counting shit out and was listening to KISW Metal Shop like Saturday night at midnight, whatever it was.
Shout out to Steve Rock.
And I heard, I think it was Follow the Reaper come on. No. It was Bodom After Midnight was the song. And I'm just like, okay, this sounds just like another European band. And then it got to the solos and I was just like, what is happening? And then I paid attention and I'm like, Children of Bodom, huh? And again, still, this was the days before I had a computer. Went into Silver Platters and they had it in stock. I'm like, are you kidding me? Got the Follow the Reaper CD, and oh man, nothing was ever the same after that. Rip Alexi.
Yeah.
Gone too soon, man.
Absolutely.
Talk about a guy though that gave his life to metal though, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he seemed like a classic kind of tortured soul of sorts, in a ways, like, I don't know what his demons were officially, but I mean, I know alcohol was part of that, and maybe it's some depression or something. I don't know where that, but I just know that he's highly regarded, and the subsequent albums post Follow the Reaper are all been highly acclaimed, like, and I know that you love him, and a lot of my friends in the industry have all been like, man, that's just one of their bands, and they accredit him as one of their main influences on guitar, which I never connected to him in that way, but I could see why, like I could see why everybody was excited. So that's obviously an influence with you and in your writing too.
Not really consciously, but just all the influences seep in, maybe more with vocals sometimes, he kind of had that higher death vocal. He kind of tried to add a note into it too, where I feel like it kind of makes it feel like you're straining your voice when you try to add a note to a death scream.
Difficult,
but
man.
A lot of people do it, like I take more the Carcass approach, where it's just the wind of death.
Yeah, you do a really good job of holding down that, like, that Carcass, that Jeff Walker vibe, but there's like which song is it that is What's Holding You Back? Nothing. Is that Golden Fire?
Yeah.
That one really is just smacks of death to Chuck Schuldiner to me more.
I like it.
Yeah, that one's like, because there's part of the riffage and the setup is there, and like the delivery of the nothing, like that part of it I can't do it, but like that part of reminds me of, like, it's somewhere kind of in between Symbolic and Sound of Perseverance. It's like it's a little something that never happened, but happened on your album instead,
Yeah, I'm not sure where, I'm just such a huge metal fan. I've listened to so much over the years that a lot of these influences seep through to my music, and I'm not even aware where they're coming from. And it just winds up getting added to the overall blend.
Well, let's go back a bit. I want to know, I know some of these some of this information, but I'm curious about what you remember about, when you first started playing guitar, and of course in relation to guitar picks, right? Like when you got, I know your dad got you a telecopy, which was the first thing. What do you remember about that guitar? What do you remember about getting that guitar and your dad's influence on you? Because your dad's quite the character, and he's like a legend in my mind. So especially with that old SG, like we were like, oh, can't touch the SG. But
shit.
Yeah, tell me about about starting, and also, like, what do you remember about your first couple guitar picks, and how did you get to play what you're playing now?
Well, growing up, my parents were huge rockers, and we just listened to rock and roll all day long, every day. So, of course, AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, Scorpions, Def Leppard. These were my ABCs. By the time I was 10 years old, all that stuff was ingrained in me. And, my dad had a Gibson SG, kind of a older, pretty vintage one. And he used to like to just play lead over the radio. He'd just find the key and play lead over whatever he was listening to. And I always thought that was super cool. I don't know when the desire to actually play guitar hit me. I mean, I played a little when I was really young, like 10 or 12. My dad's friend, Everett, had like 13 guitars. And every now and then he would just bring them all over, and they would just have huge jams in the garage for hours. And Everett had this little tiny travel guitar, which was the right size for me because I was a little kid. So they started teaching me, I think, Ghost Riders in the Sky, which is odd because it was like a TV. I think it was the theme to Gunsmoke.
Oh, weird.
But I didn't know that. And full circle, it's super weird. Children of Bodom actually covered Ghost Riders in the Sky.
Oh, whoa. I didn't know that.
Years later, just super weird, super weird. So, at some point, well, Everett took all his guitars, and, you know, the travel guitar wasn't around anymore. And I thought I was too young to play a full-size guitar, so I just gave it up for a few years. Then, you know, around 15 and a half, I think I really decided that I wanted to do it again, you know, totally inspired by Metallica. And so I asked for a guitar for Christmas. And so, of course, my dad found a way. Well, my parents, I don't know who is really responsible, but my dad managed to get one of his friend's guitars, and it was, I guess, a Japanese copy, I don't know, of a Telecaster. It was not a brand name, but it had a hot aftermarket Seymour Duncan humbucker in it. But me, as a 16-year-old metalhead, when I saw that it was a cream-colored Telecaster, I'm like, what are you guys doing to me? Like, this is not the image I'm going for. Like, I needed like at least like a red Strat, like a black something, you know? So immediately when I got that guitar, I was like, what the hell? And I swear I didn't even start playing it for a month. I just kept looking at it like, not that I'm ungrateful to my parents. I mean, fucking, I appreciate you guys got me the guitar.
Sure.
But I mean, first thing I did was start saving my lunch money so I could buy an Ibanez.
I remember that Ibanez that you ended up getting,
you know,
too.
and it took maybe, you know, a year or two. I sold the telly to, I think, my wife, actually, at the moment. She bought it just so she could have something that was like mine. She wanted to be connected to me. And then eventually,
remember that. Okay.
And then eventually, I think she gave it to my brother, maybe. So my brother Jared still has that telly.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so cool.
So regarding the picks, it was the same deal. You know, my dad was always playing lead, and there was always picks around the house. And the ones I remember most is like the celluloid Fender, like ones you could kind of see through. They weren't that thick. You could bend them, you know, and some of them be like the tortoiseshell, I think, you know, and, you know, you just kind of played with whatever was around the house. It didn't even really occur to me that picks could be different or have different effects. You know, even the difference between something super soft and something super hard. It's like, I wasn't a good enough player yet to even have a preference. You just kind of were working your way through it. And then I don't know, eventually, I've heard you talk about this before. I don't know if it was Dimebag or James Murphy, but we saw that someone was using the 88s, the Tortex 88s.
Yeah.
And that became my favorite for years and years and years. And I never even tried anything else. Like the whole time through Only Human, it was that Tortex 88.
Same.
Even to the point where you had all those custom ones made for me.
Heck yeah.
You can see that. Yeah, and those are
Yeah, me
great.
too.
I've been packing those in with my CDs as people buy those.
Super cool.
It's a cool little add-on now that I don't even play that pick anymore, and I've got like 2,000 of them.
It's perfect. Give them all away.
So then when I was fortunate enough to go to NAMM with you, what, 2018, 19, the years are just,
I think it's 19.
I don't believe in time anymore, right?
Yeah.
There was me and my wife have an inside joke where we were watching SNL, and they had a movie reviewer, was just a character that had reviewed a bunch of movies on acid. And, you know, it was on Weekend Update. So it's Colin Jost.
Yeah.
And Colin asked him something about the time of the movie, and he says, "You still believe in time, Colin?" So that's one of my wife's inside jokes. I totally do not believe in time anymore. It's just a figment.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that.
But so, you know, when we got to NAMM, I don't know what, I just suddenly realized a bunch of shortcomings in my playing. Like, you know, sitting down at those demo booths and playing in front of all these worldwide shredders made me feel a little self-conscious.
You think? Maybe?
You know, and I would see some great players watching me for a second and just have this look like, the hell is he doing? You know, and so it was partly that, but then it was partly seeing NAMM as kind of a location that was like a physical representation of guitar success. I'm like, dude, if you have made it, you're here. Like, and I'm like, I want to make it. I want to be here. I want to be in the Cool Kids Club. And I'm like, when I got back from that eye-opening experience, I just kind of had a lot of ideas on how to take myself to the next level. And I knew the first thing that I needed to do was change my pick technique. The whole time I'd been playing, you know, I held my pick wrong. We had the same guitar teacher, and his attitude was just do whatever feels comfortable to you. Like, nothing is wrong. Like, just do you. And so I held my pick like this with one finger out. And it was great for things that required a little more reach, like string skipping, but it really slowed me down speed-wise. So first thing I did was, when I got home, learn to hold my pick correctly like this. And it probably added an instant third to my speed, just because the fulcrum no longer was way out here. It was in here. So every note was that much less distance to travel. But then once I changed my pick technique, I needed to find a new pick because that 88 no longer felt right with the way that it hit my finger. So at that point, I started auditioning every pick I could get my hands on. And this is when you were with Dunlop, so it wasn't hard.
Yeah, right.
You're like, here's the new Flow, here's the new 420, here's the new Petrucci, here's the new Andy James. And I'm just trying out all these different thicknesses, all these different shapes. And what I wound up really loving was the nylon Jazz 3 XL.
The red one.
The red one. I tried the other nylon, the black one as well. But I don't know what it is. It's something about the feel of the texture when it's on the string. I don't know what it is, but this red one is just perfect. And I had tried the smaller Jazz 3 because I know how popular it is. And I found it really good for shredding, like really good for lead. But when it came to riffing, I just couldn't quite hold on to it well enough. Like when I'm hitting the strings hard. And I found that this XL, it tucks in to the top of my hand in the perfect way where you've got that grip on the upper finger and it just locks in. And so, yeah, ever since then, it's just been the Jazz 3 XL.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great progression too, and it's for all the right reasons. It's like you find new inspiration. You see people doing things that you weren't really sure was even being done, and like that opens you up. Like, oh well, what am I not doing? What else could I be doing that if I just changed a couple things, and that's. Kudos to you, man, because it's difficult, especially after you've been doing something for a long time, to change, because change is difficult usually in most arenas in life, and especially when something that is as personable as an instrument and the way that you play, you have to have great motivation to shift. Otherwise, because it's too easy to just go back to the thing that is comfortable, that but you obviously had your sights set, and so here you are, because I remember in the beginning too, like there even maybe was it like a little bit of an uptick around the way you held the pick, and then now you're kind of forward with it, or am I remembering that incorrectly, or
it's possible. I probably didn't even analyze my own technique that much, as long as the sound was coming out like I liked. It didn't really matter. But yeah, no, I've noticed that type of thing, like with watching Ola England play. Like Ola's got a very strange pick technique where he kind of fans as he goes along the strings. And when he's on the top two rhythm strings, he's doing a lot of upstrokes. And it just goes to show that you can do it any way that works for you. Look at Marty Friedman. Look at Marty Friedman's crazy right-hand technique.
Exactly.
And nobody's talking any shit about him.
No, nor should you. That dude is, especially seeing him live a handful of times in recent years, where he's like kind of on his own, doing his own thing. He's strangely just such a force to be reckoned with, because like, it's weird. Like he's not a bedroom shredder. He's a world-class, top-shelf stadium guy that can fire it off and not look and like, what? Did I just blow your doors completely off? Sorry. Oh, and my wrist looks funny. You want to talk shit? Are you talking shit? He's a short dude that wears big platform boots and has curly hair, but like will just shred. And he's not even, it's like his mental capacity is not trying to do that to you. That's just kind of where he goes with it, which is, last time I saw him, I was like, I just in awe, because it's, when you do something, just like you're talking, it's like going to NAMM and you're like, okay, I've been playing guitar for 20 years. And then you go there and you're like, oh, there's every way to do this. And I am one narrow little sliver of how it can be done. Not wrong, not right, and there's just this wide panacea of, of possibility. And yeah, if Dave Mustaine can be a vocalist, then Marty Friedman can be a guitar player,
Yeah, it's true. Just do you, right? Somebody out there is going to like it, hopefully.
Yeah. If you play the numbers, and I think that's the deal, right? With anything, it's like, if you that's what Kirby taught me back in the day, was like, just ask enough people, somebody's going to buy a $2,000 vacuum cleaner eventually.
Yeah, I say only if you get 10% engagement. That's still what you were looking for.
yeah. It's like there's just the persistence outweighs their resistance, as they say in the sales meetings.
Well, as you're talking about, everybody being able to do things their own way, that you're just one tiny sliver of the whole, that can be kind of intimidating, being like, how am I going to get anybody to find my sliver? But then it's also inspiring that there are infinite flavors of the thing that you like. Like that's what I love about metal. And it's what keeps me from feeling like I'm missing out by not listening to a lot of other genres, is because I feel like there's a lot of variation within metal. Like you could be listening to something as light as Scorpions and it still counts as metal, or you could be listening to a Legion, some brutal tech death.
Sure.
Or you could be listening to Dream Theater, which I don't know if that still counts as metal, Periphery, I mean, any blend of elements you want is allowed. And, to bring it back to my album, I think that's what I really freed myself up for this time, was to just be myself. I'm definitely not ever thinking of fitting a genre. I'm not ever thinking that I'm death or I'm thrash or melodic death metal, I'm just like, do what you do and someone will like it. And probably one of the biggest rewards or feelings of victory on this album was there's a guy that I've come up with over the last 10 years or so here in Seattle, and he's more of a punk rocker. His name's Jeff Little, and early on he was helping me with a lot of my production when he had a computer and I didn't have one yet, and he'd kind of show me what he knew. And then now I've been learning a lot more and showing him what I know. And so he kind of was along for a lot of the behind the scenes process of this album and saw it kind of coming together. And when he was hearing it towards the end of the progression, he turned to me and he said, "You've got your own style now." And, that's one of the coolest things that you could hear as an artist that's been grinding and working at it so hard and feeling like you're just emulating your heroes. To feel that finally I made something that's my own and my own flavor. I mean, that's where you want to be, right?
Absolutely. And I will second it too. I feel very much the same, especially because I know the other albums, even though you're like kind of put them in the background and they're like demos now. You quite literally wouldn't be here doing this without them, right? Like they're very, very clear stepping stones to be in this place. And you cut your teeth on a lot of work previous to this, a lot of work, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. Even though I pick out, part of me goes, oh, that feels like a little death thing, or that's a little carcass thing, or that's the thing. The thing that I'm super excited about is that it's not, you have people that wear their influences really clearly on their sleeve. I get tired of pretty quickly, because I'm like, oh, but I could just listen to Tool if I wanted. I could just listen to that other band that it reminds me of if I wanted to hear that.
Absolutely.
But when you combine this type of wide array of influences in one place, and it takes on a new, all together new flavor, right? And I think that's what maybe Jeff is alluding to in some ways, because and I think that all the classic things that I know and love about what you do are present, and then you also press yourself for the singing and the production and the arrangement and the album. Everything is next level for you on this effort. So it's it's super exciting in that respect because I know all too well, like what it feels like to kind of, you keep emulating, you keep doing things that like, I just want something to sound almost like Blackened. I want something to sound that's kind of Justice, or I want this or whatever. And you go for it and you kind of achieve it to some degree. And then it's not till years later, after you've been steeped in the juices of all the influences for long enough, and you've really put time and effort into your own, technique, your own willingness to express, that something like this can even take place.
Yeah, it's quite a process. Hopefully that I can stay on the same path, and now with all the things that I've learned, it won't take quite as long on the next material. Hopefully
Sure.
I can keep this momentum going, and I'm excited to write some more songs in this same vein. Just because I'm loving the sound as well, and I want to hear some more exploration of this sound myself. And hopefully I can become a little more prolific, like it's crazy how some bands can put out brilliant stuff every 2 years. Like Dream Theater drops 70 minutes of new music like every 2 years. How
Sure.
are they doing this?
That's all they do.
Right. But I mean, some bands, it takes them 8 years to put out an album. Scar Symmetry, I'm looking at you.
Slouches.
I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, I just did an album by myself in the same amount of time that Scar Symmetry's been making me wait.
True, but Per has been in Meshuggah and 3 other bands that whole time too.
This is true.
I'll give him that.
This is true.
And because I like him, I give him a pass. He's like one of the best dudes and greatest players on the planet. So
it just hurts so bad because I want some more. Give it to me, Per.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's true. There's that I agree. I think that you're gonna like, it'll be really interesting to see the next projects that are maybe in the same vein, but I'm also personally excited to see what you do outside of this, because I know you have some desire to do instrumental stuff and just play around a little bit, because now that you have these tools at your fingertips and you're like, oh, I can do all kinds of things, and it doesn't have to be this necessarily. So I hope for us to do some more collaboration around that type of stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to doing a little instrumental EP here, having been shown another side of guitar since NAMM as well, and learning about all these new school guys like Polyphia, Pliny, and people who are just kind of reinventing guitar in a way, and finding new ways to make it relevant. And just that, that fun attitude of Polyphia. I'm like, not that I'm going to try to make Polyphia music. I mean, let's be real here.
I understand.
But, even coming up as a fan of Satriani when we were younger, just doing some Satriani style jams, I've never really put out anything instrumental. So it'll probably be a similar situation where just a lot of my instrumental influences will come through. I'm not sure what the blend will be like, we're going to find out,
Yeah. No, that's part of the fun. I think honestly, for me, when it comes to music, sometimes you have, like an idea. Like obviously when you're writing a record, you have an idea. You're making a metal record. You're making, that maybe you don't know, you're not trying to pinpoint a subgenre, but you're like, I'm making a heavy fucking thing. And so it's got a slam. But what I love about instrumental music is that it can be super mellow. It could be, hip hop influenced, trap influenced. It could be country influenced. I mean, you can, you name it, bro. Like it's like every little version. And you look at like some of our favorite artists too, like Steve Vai is a good example. Like he even though he's definitely his own voice and his own thing, like the songs vary widely from one track to the next, you know, like the energy, the BPM, and like one could be kind of almost borderline metal, and then the next one it's like he's doing something completely wonky with an effect with his eventide, you know, harmonizer, and the boundaries are even less, you know, in that realm.
Well, and that brings me to kind of a thought that I really am not a big fan of singles. Like if they're in support of an album, that's fine. But like you're saying, with different flavors, I find that we still need the album format to present the different flavors. Because it gives a place for them to live. Like if you're just to do singles, just to satiate Spotify, you know, whatever, everybody wants something new every month. But without having different flavors surrounding the song, you kind of can't really, no one song could ever be enough, in my opinion. Like it doesn't leave you any room to experiment. Like if you're going to release a single on its own, it's got to be a hit. It can't be experimental. It can't be something super weird. And then people are just going to be like, what's going on? But if you put that different flavor in a set of flavors, it's going to make more sense.
I hear that.
Like, just checking out the new In Flames single. What is it? It's like State of Slow Decay. And I'm honestly not sure what I think about it, because it's just one flavor. I need to hear the surrounding songs on the album to give it a little of context.
Absolutely.
Like, is the whole album going to be hard? Is that going to be the hardest song on the album? Like, what is this song? Like when it's just alone, I don't know. I feel like something's missing.
Yeah. And I would agree, especially in heavier non-pop music, right? Because pop music, I mean, can do the single because it's always aiming for a catchy hit. It's all, you know, the vast majority of pop music, even if it's a sad song and you know, whatever, that it's something that it's a microcosm and it lives on its own. And if it happens to be a part of a group of songs that are like-minded or has its own larger ecosystem, then great, that's fine. It's a nice find. But the vast majority of people, they find one song, it speaks to them, it tells a story, or you know, it's got a catchy enough hook that, or the beat is dope enough so they dance, and like it's got a guest by Snoop Dogg, so fuck it, we're in, you know, like it's like. But the vast majority of the music that we would probably listen to, you know, it needs context to know, like, what do I even, you can like it by itself, but if I like it, then I either want more of it, or I want to know what, you know, in what other way, how does this fit into the artist's like way of thinking, right? You want to be in the mind of the artist in a way to kind of know, what are they trying to say?
Yeah, gosh, like Vela Maya, what they just been dropping singles, and I'm like, you guys are kind of losing me. I don't know, you need to give me something more substantial. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. In hip hop, you know, you just need the one hit. And you go on, see them on YouTube, and they've got 15 million views on this one track. I'm like, they are not suffering by not having the album format.
Right. And thankfully, there's been a lot of kind of progressive and more esoteric elements that have gone into indie hip hop for a long time. Like, so there's like less trying to make hits and more storytelling, more crafty, creative stuff. Thankfully, on the more on the indie and underground stuff, like that started happening more so in the early 2000s with Atmosphere and Sage Francis and all the stuff that a lot of it I found at Silver Platters in Seattle. And through one of the other guys when I was working there, he was the hip hop buyer, and that's just another side note back to that other side mission, was that when you walked into a dope record store, there was usually one or two people that you trusted,
right?
Like, oh, what do you got for me? It's that Frank character at the
Yeah.
metal place, but you go to another place and you when you're working around a dude that all he does is live, eat, sleep, shit, hip hop, and you're like, dude, show me what is the best thing to you? And he's like, bro, one, two, this one, you got homework to do. And I'm like, oh, because at that point, my understanding of hip hop was mostly the mainstream. Like if Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre hadn't put something out, or Eminem, like that was Eminem was the first new thing in a long time when that came out. We're just like, even though there was tons of shit going on, but we weren't aware of it because there wasn't a computer that was, pushing it on us, and we had to go looking for it and ask about it. And then, why was I even talking about that? I don't even know why I was talking about that. I went on a side mission and got lost.
Abort mission.
It was about music and the fact that modern hip hop, thankfully, isn't stuck in singles, even though they still use it. But like I was telling you about the Kendrick Lamar album, that's a super good example of like, he's got a bunch of tracks that will stand on their own, but that is a masterwork from start to finish. Like he's telling a story, he's telling his story, but inside of his story, there's a bunch of like character stories that you're not quite sure if it's him or if it's somebody else that he's like speaking for. It's a very, very artsy thing. And a few of those tracks don't really stand alone on their own. They have to have context of the album to make real sense. And so that element alone tells me, oh, like he's asking for my patience, to like listen to this a few times and not just like go, oh yeah, I don't know, interesting, because it's too dense. And just like your album, it's too dense. You can't listen to it once and get it. You have to let it marinate for a bit, and then you'll really get the genius of it.
I think that was part of the problem with some of my previous efforts, is they were just too much. Like it's not the type of album you could listen to on repeat. Whereas the albums that I really get into, like when you're crazy about them, I'm listening to that 2-3 times in a row,
Yeah.
Like when I discovered that first Threat Signal, Under Reprisal, I listened to that album on repeat for a month and never got tired of it. I'm just like, nothing else can touch this. That's
one of my favorite things about you and your love for metal, is that when you find the vein of gold, you like consume it consistently.
It's kind of a double-edged sword though, because you can really over listen to something and make yourself sick of it. You can ruin it for yourself.
Sure.
I was really trying to not do that with the newest Dream Theater, because it's so good. And I was listening to it every day and I'm like, I'm going to kill this for myself if I make it too rough. Also, another instrumental band that I'm really in danger of overdoing it with. It was the opening act for Dream Theater that I saw just a couple of months ago. And it's an instrumental band called Arch Echo.
They're
great. Boy, I cannot stop listening to it. Like, I work from home. While I'm working, I probably listen to their entire catalog every day.
Jeez.
I mean, it's only like 2 hours. It's not a huge catalog. So and I'm like, I've got it pretty much fully memorized now. And I'm like, I am in danger of really ruining this for myself.
Well, absence will let the heart grow fonder, or they'll put out a new album. I mean, we did that. At least I know I did that with Pantera and certain other bands for a while too, where I just, I had a season of just like, that's the only thing I wanted to listen to. And these days, like, I love that I had so much time and energy with that band, for example, with Pantera. And then now when I put it on, it's such a massive, like, upwelling. It's almost like the early days, because I don't have it. It's in my blood, but it's not like I'm not sick of it. I'm like, oh, that's right. This is the power of the universe colliding. When you really hear, like, I love all the albums, but I mean, the production on Trendkill and some of the spaciousness that happened in that production kind of moves me the most in a lot of ways, like songs like Tins and Drag the Waters. And even though I love the heavy stuff, it's like those things that help contrast the really heavy things. And it was really the first album that I got, like, the day it came, or the day before it came out, in that particular case.
Yeah, I remember that, kicking it over to a friend's house, and somehow through Tower Records, you had finagled it was Southern Trendkill.
Yeah.
And you hadn't gotten it the day early.
Yeah.
And you just came over to the chill pad, didn't say a word, and just put it on the stereo. And we were all doing something else. And it took about maybe 20, 30 seconds into the first song. And I remember the realization hitting me. I'm like, wait a minute, I know what this is. Oh, yeah.
That was Jesse Young's house.
Yeah.
And I think you guys were playing Magic.
Yeah, right.
Or something like that. But I remember I drove over to Chico, and it was like a friend of a friend. I don't even remember who, because it was before I ever worked there. But somebody had said, oh yeah, I'm like, I'll be here tomorrow for the Pantera thing. They're like, we've got them in the back right now. I'm like, sell it to me now, like, or I'll kill you, basically, like, please. I mean, I won't kill you. I mean, just, I don't remember, somebody granted me, I forget how it really went down, but I bought the cassette and the CD. So I listened to the tape on the way over to
you already had a little.
Oh yeah, I knew.
A little cheater ahead.
Yeah. I knew. Like, and that's like one of the greatest openings of any album ever. Especially for a Pantera fan. All is that Far Beyond Driven was so much heavier and grindier than the previous effort, and like raw, and like, what could they possibly do that would be beyond that? And well,
yeah, that opening was a real statement to say, we're not slowing down, we're not getting soft, we're not going the Load route. I don't know if Load had happened by then, but
not quite yet.
They're like, yeah, we're staying true.
Or maybe it had. Actually, maybe it had.
I remember that Load came out on the same day as Carcass' Swan Song.
Oh, so no, it hadn't then. I have to look back. It might like a year or two, because 97, late 96 or 97 was Trendkill. And like 96 was Down, NOLA, the first one, and then like Trendkill came in, I believe, and we saw them one of the times in Sacramento in 97 on Trendkill tour for sure, with like White Zombie, I think.
Oh, I saw them 4 or 5 times on that tour.
Yeah. I think that was the most of the times that we had seen them.
No, I take it back. I think I saw them 3 times at least on Reinventing the Steel.
With Morbid Angel at the Key Arena was one of them. Wasn't it?
It wasn't at the Key for us. That was outdoors somewhere. I forget. I have the poster still.
Speaking of posters, though, I see in the back there you've got the July 10th.
Yeah, the original. This was when we met Dimebag. So
I've told that story a bunch on here, but I'm curious about what your version of the story is. How do you remember things going down? Because I think I called you from Portland, because we were calling relatively, kind of pretty often, because I was in Portland and didn't really want to be there. in the early days and missed the crap out of you and didn't have a buddy there that I was listening to metal with. And Far Beyond Driven came out while I was up there.
Whoa.
So, as did Alice in Chains, Jar of Flies, and Soundgarden, Super Unknown, all came out in like 94. Like,
well, I don't remember exactly how it went down. It was like, did you even come and drive me up? How the hell did I even get up there?
Yeah, no, so I know that part. So I bought the tickets, and you're like, but how? I'm like, I'm going to drive down. We're going to turn around and drive back, and you're going to take the bus home. That was the deal.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. So, I mean, we were there. So I'm visiting you in Portland. And we were just killing time day of the show.
No, day before though.
Day before
what happened?
the show.
What happened the day before?
Oh my God. You're gonna make me go that far back, right?
Well, we were hanging out with Devin,
okay,
and her friend.
I was only 16 at the time, right?
Same.
I had never actually drank tequila. And so we were drinking some tequila on the beach at, just at the river. And fuck, I don't even like this story. So we were drinking tequila with Zima chasers, right? Like gross.
Oh, I forgot that part.
And so we've got like the red Solo cups, and I have filled up a fucking red Solo cup to the bottom of the lines with straight tequila. And I'm straight drinking this whole drink in maybe 15 minutes. And I'm like, man, I don't feel anything. So I filled up another one, start drinking that. Oh my God, I had alcohol poisoning by the end of the night. Okay. When I woke up in the morning, I woke up with sand packed in my ear from biffing it on the beach.
Oh no.
Yeah. Okay. So I wake up on the couch. I'm trying to get all the sand out of my ear. Oh my God. Like straight alcohol poisoning. It was bad. Like I remember us going to like some fast food place first thing in the afternoon. All I wanted was a soda. Oh God. And I remember getting a Sprite or something. I'm like, oh, this is going to be so refreshing. Took a big gulp and it just tasted like tequila. And I was just like, ah!
No.
Okay. So I'm recovering pretty quick. We're young. We can do this. So then it's day of the show and we were kicking it at the biggest music store in Portland, Apple Music, not affiliated with Apple at all.
Yeah.
So we go in there and I remember that shop, the guy had an incredible personal collection, like 80 guitars around the top row of that shop. Just the rarest, craziest pointy shit that you've never seen in your life. And we're just marveling at all these crazy guitars. And I think we were actually up at the counter talking to the counter person about some crazy Ibanez gems that he had behind the counter. And the guy says to us, oh, the bass player from Prong just walked in. And we're like, what? Where? And we are young, total fanboys. So we're going to go chat him up. So we go over and didn't actually start talking to him. We started talking to one of the guys with him that turned out to be Phil Anselmo's personal stage assistant. And I'm like, damn, dude, I just came, 600 miles to see the world's best metal band. Does that mean I can get some backstage passes or what? And he's like, actually, yeah. He's like, I usually have 4 or 6 in any given city with nobody to give them to. Just meet me between the stage, before Pantera goes on. And I'll remember your shirt because I was wearing a Consolidated Skate Company shirt that I had borrowed from my friend. It was red with a giant red devil head on it. And he's like, I'll remember that shirt. So sure enough, in between bands, we went over to the fence. We saw him, flagged him down, came over, brought us our passes. I remember I was trying to be all on the DL. That you're all woo, holding yours in the air, like, yeah. And I'm like, don't do that. People are gonna tackle us.
That dude said, hey, put them in your pockets too. Like as I was stoked.
So after the show, that was the first show that I ever moshed. So of course we're super sweaty, you know, like, and had to go through, Lord knows how many security checks. Like they checked our backstage pass, 4, 5, 6 different times as they're weeding through the crowd, trying to get rid of the people that don't belong. So eventually we got to the actual backstage area, and it was like smaller circus tents in a way. And then they had like cafeteria tables set up in there. It was probably sponsored by some radio station. So we're just in there kicking it for 20, 30 minutes with about 40, 50 other people. And we're just waiting for Pantera to come in, right? So eventually, I believe that it was Vinny that came first. And he comes riding into the tent on a golf cart. He takes a look around the room, finds the hottest girl with the biggest boobs, gets her on the golf cart, and they leave immediately. Okay. So then we're waiting. I think Rex comes in next. And of course, he's just getting bombarded with people, like 40 people trying to talk to him. So I just give him some space and waited, right? Now, I don't know if Vinny struck out or if he got off really quick, but Vinny was back in 15 minutes. And then so the crowd kind of migrated over to Vinny because he's the new fish in the backstage bowl. So, all right, cool. I'll go talk to Rex now that there's some space. And he was pretty low key, you know, he wasn't too hyped up, but he was cool. And I remember talking to him about all his skull tattoos. Like one of his arms is just skulls on skulls, you know, and it's pretty cool. I don't think I got a pic from Rex. Then I don't remember if Phil or Dime came in next, but whoever came in next just got absolutely swarmed. Again, you had to kind of wait to get a chance. I remember talking to Dime about, well, the thing is, a lot of the people there were kind of posers. Like a lot of the people there were not huge Pantera fans. Like they had just won their passes off a radio contest or whatever. So I kind of couldn't believe it. After probably less than an hour, the crowd was really thinning out. And after a while, there was only about 15 of us that really wanted to kick it deep. And that's when the real party started. And Dime got on the radio. He's like, get us some beers over here in tent B4. People start bringing shit in. And then this is also when on the home videos, they had been shaving everybody's head. And I remember you were growing your hair out maybe halfway. It was like down to here maybe and dyed green. And at that point, Phil had been doing all the shaving. And I remember you asking Phil if he'd shave your head on camera for the video. And he's just like, nah, man, you should do what I'm going to do. And that's grow your hair out forever. Never comb it, never wash it. And that's what you should do too. And then you're like, nah, fuck that. We're doing this. So you went over and hit Dime up, and Dime's like, hell yeah, you got an ugly mop. That thing's going down. So then he gets on the CB again. He's like, let's get some clippers over here in tent before. And then they couldn't find him, and he had to go hunt him down himself, if I recall. So he comes back, and he was pretty drunk. So I remember shaving your head on camera, and he's like nicking your head, making it bleed. And the cameraman, I don't know if it was Bobby Tongs or whatever, he's like trying to have a drink, and he's like, here, hold my camera for a second. Hands me the motherfucking expensive camera, and I'm filming you guys. So it was a blast, I mean, other than that, I remember at some point we were doing blacktooths directly into each other's mouths.
Yeah.
So I straight up poured a fucking blacktooth into Dimebag's mouth, and vice versa. And I mean, that's just so legendary. Like, I can't believe that we literally don't have video of this. It was
probably in the archives somewhere.
It was before the time that you had a camera on your phone, and a disposable camera would not have survived that pit.
No, we didn't have phones. Yeah, we didn't know what we were doing.
So luckily you got one picture with Dime the next time you met him, and you knew that you were going to meet him.
Yeah, it was 97. Yeah.
I guess the other detail that I was missing is that Phil and Dime both had asked for my Red Devil shirt. They thought it was so freaking cool. And I actually told Phil no, because I was borrowing that shirt from my buddy Jay Bustamante.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, when my hero Dime started grilling me about it, and he's like, man, I need that shirt. I'm going to give it to Phil. I'll make him watch it I'll make him wear it in the next video. And I said, oh, well, all right. And I just took my shirt off and gave it to him. He said, well, I'll give you a replacement shirt. I'll get you a Pantera shirt off the bus. So what happens though? He's so wasted that we go out to the bus. We'd already been kicking it for 2 hours after the show. He's got to be wasted and exhausted. So Dime goes back onto the bus though, and just never comes back out. And I'm waiting there with no shirt in the middle of the night. And I hit up one of the roadies. I'm like, hey, Dime was supposed to be bringing a shirt out. He's like, yeah, no, I don't think he's coming back out.
No, he came back. He came back out and gave us the pics.
Well, I don't know. I know that I had to make it home with no shirt.
Yeah, you left with no shirt. You got like the way I remember it just was that he went on and then came back and was like, they put the shirts away. I don't got it for you. But I got this for you. And he gave us those little promo cards of the black and white concrete management photos, and then a handful of pics. And that's all we got. He's like, I got to keep the shirt, but I'm going to give you guys this shit. And well, that was I was like the most epic thing. I remember right after that though, well, kind of in one of my favorite things, because it's like almost like in my mind like a movie, like we were walking away to go find the car. We're just like, what the fuck happened? Like, did we just like really meet Pantera, and that he took your shirt and like we got fixed, and like I'm drunk and I shouldn't be driving home right now. It's like,
oh no,
like, but we're gonna make it home. Like we're gonna figure it out. Like it was, just echoes in my mind, from that moment. Cause like, it's like, and it's weird to have something like that happen to you. Like that was my first, you'd been to concerts. I hadn't been to a big concert before. I'd never gone to a metal concert. I mostly went to Christian rap concerts because my parents were all Christian. So like I was like, I don't really know what to expect, but I was down to clown, and crowd surfed a little bit and moshed, and
definitely a good sign of things to come for you. I mean, established being able to hang out with badasses and not be starstruck, learn to hang out.
He made it so easy though. He was so personable and like didn't make us feel, I mean, out of everybody, Dime was the one that was like the homie. You know, it just felt like, oh yeah, we could hang out with Dime anytime. But the rest of the guys were a little bit, you know.
Phil was real cool to me. My experience with Phil, I remember the biggest thing I remember about Phil is he had just gotten a new tattoo that took up the whole side of his right leg.
Oh,
and it was Jesus on the cross upside down.
Oh, fuck.
And I'm like, holy shit, dude, you are really going all in. I'm like, I can't imagine anything more evil than that.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, man, I know, right? Like, he was so proud of it.
Hilarious.
But yeah, he was in a good mood.
Oh man, yeah, it's good to remember that with you, because you definitely remember little aspects of it differently than me, you know. And it's like, yeah, it's like, and the one little thing that I always like laugh at too, you probably don't remember, but you'll remember now. It's like we took another dude with us. There was a guy.
Oh yeah, I always forget about that.
There's this other dude that worked with me at Burger King. My job was at Burger King. And so like this random guy bought tickets to the show, and like, I mean, yeah, you can get a ride with us, man. But I didn't really like him. He wasn't like a buddy or anything. And I was kind of just like annoyed that he had to come along. And then he's standing there with us when we got our passes. And that dude, Max, that gave us the passes was like, oh, I only got 3. And I'm like, well, there's 3 of us. And I'm like, God damn it. Like, I almost didn't want to give it to him. You know, I'm like, you don't deserve. And I don't remember us taking him home. I don't know how. I don't remember him backstage at all. So like, it's really weird.
What the hell?
He just like faded into the background. I don't know how he got home. I don't know nothing, but
sorry, dude, that we deemed you unimportant.
Yeah. Well, and the coolest kind of, you know, long-term payoff was, you know, I've told the story that, you know, Jay Bustamante was mad that you got rid of his shirt and all that stuff, and didn't really believe him and didn't really believe you. And then I got that import from the underground, and it was San Jose 2 days later, which I still have it on VHS. I should probably send it to you. You probably do you have a VCR?
I've got a combo VCR DVD burner. I could burn it to DVD.
Yeah, then we could get it digitized. Yeah. It was like when I was working at the underground, you know, I was like, oh, what? That's like San Jose 2 days after. It was July 16th, 1994.
Yeah.
And it was like with guests of Jason Newsted and freaking Chuck Billy both came out. And they did just a tiny bit of that show actually made the Pantera 3 video. The red shirt actually is on the Pantera 3 video. Yeah, but it's not from that show though. I don't know. Maybe it is from the show.
It's when Newsted came out. Newsted was with him.
Oh, I didn't really put that together, but yeah, I saw him because like this is before Pantera 3 came out though. That video we found
way
it
before.
Yeah, and then it was like, oh, and my favorite thing about that video is that 3-4 songs into the set, Phil stops and he's like, hey, throw your fucking shirts up here, man. Fucking Dimebag got me this from People. Come on, throw it up here, man. And it's all of a sudden, all these shirts
from People.
Yeah,
I remember. Yeah.
Killed me. I was like, oh my, we're people, bro. We're people. We're the people. Woo! That's us.
It's official.
And there's like a millisecond of a thing where Phil turns and is walking in that Pantera 3 where he's wearing the shirt.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that when Dime was like, I'll make him watch it, I'll make him wear it in the video, I was thinking like a music video.
Sure.
I'm like, I didn't realize he just meant like slip it into the home video for like 2 seconds.
Hey man, it's proof. It's proof of our existence that we're people. So we'll be happy with what we got. I know it would have been sick if it was actually a real one of the Pantera videos, but
But then, of course, I was bummed that we didn't make it onto the 3 video because they were filming backstage the whole time. And it, partying was such a way of life for us then that it didn't even really occur to me. Oh, they probably can't put drinking with 16-year-olds out on the video. That's probably kind of frowned upon.
Yeah, probably.
Like,
and we were getting slayed. Yeah, I remember that's the other thing too, was larger than life. Literally, it was like Big Val. Big Val was the guy that was on the other end of the thing when Dime said, bring more beers in, go get,
That's
Phil
right.
Shavers. And Big Val's RIP, passed on. So he's not around anymore either. So no Dime, no Vinny, no Big Val.
Yeah, I even went so far as to get Big Val's autograph because he was already famous enough from the home videos then,
I thought you had some interaction with him. I didn't realize that you got his autograph. That's cool.
Yeah. And I didn't have anything good to have them autograph. So it was just like, I've got all Pantera's autographs on a napkin.
I had Dime and Phil on a St. Pauli girl beer bottle for a long time. I think, I don't know, I gave it away to somebody. I don't know what, because I don't know what I did with that.
Yeah, this is kind of embarrassing, but I had seen somebody like Dime finished a beer and put it down, and somebody grabbed Dime's empty beer bottle and had him autograph it. And I'm like, oh, that was a super rad idea. Why didn't I think about that? And I just grabbed some random beer bottle and I'm like, here, sign my beer bottle. And he's like, I didn't even drink that one. But I still have that bottle now. I still have that one.
Did he signed that one?
Yeah, it's just like a DB on it. It's just initials.
Yeah. You still have the pics though from that era, right? The Diamond Darrell pics.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I should have had them. I should have had them ready to go for visual aids, but
bro, I remember there was a handful of those and a handful of the little sheets, the little promo photos, and not really. I've never been one to collect for long-term sake, really. So I would just give shit away. And I had I don't even know who I gave the Pantera pics away to. I'm like, as long as I have one, I'm good. But I also didn't think that Dime would be murdered, So that to me is still I still don't even, I didn't even like saying, I don't even want to and it's like by gun violence. It's good Lord, some rando just rolling in on stage of all fucking places,
it's just when I heard the news, I didn't want to believe it. I'm like, no, you're confused. It's somebody else.
Yeah.
Because why is it got to be the good ones? Dime was so kind and so personable and just so down to have a good time. Why did it have to be him? I mean, not that anyone would have deserved it, but
I know,
there are
but
a lot of, less kind people out there.
I don't want to say names, but I was like, yeah, I could think of why couldn't it have been blah 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 or who so
right. It's a rough concept.
Yeah, very rough. But along those lines, man, just to further the coolness factor between you and I through the years, we went and saw Dream Theater together on the Awake tour, bro. It's cool as fuck. What was that, the Warfield in San Francisco. Yeah, and Fate's Warning opened. That was super cool. I mean, I didn't really know that band. I don't think we really knew that band until we saw them there. And then came back and saw Meshuggah probably on their second or third first real tour in America.
Yeah, it was on Destroy Erase Improve. Or was it Chaos Sphere?
It was Chaos Sphere, because Destroy Erase Improve is what Klaus actually introduced us.
Yeah,
Meshuggah, which that's the other really cool thing that of all the the metal elitism that's out there, it's people are like, oh man, I've been to Meshuggah for a long. I'm like, yeah, shut up, man. Like, you know, if you want to play whose metal elitism dick is bigger, just like we had a Swedish exchange student in 92 and 93 that was like, oh, Pantera's not that great, like Meshuggah's better, and we're like, fuck you, dude, that's not true. And then it was a while before we actually caught on, and actually gave them their due. And then we were like, oh, we've been into this band before, like nobody else knows who this band, so it's like, it was the ultimate thing.
It's crazy to think that gent is really almost as old as death metal. Like if death metal started in the late 80s, early 90s, you know, I mean, and then gent really started in the, you know, early to mid 90s.
I would say more late 90s stuff. I mean, because what was because Destroy Race and well, I guess you're right. I guess the origins of it is mid 90s, probably like 95, like right around when we were graduating, and you know, people were catching on.
It's just
right?
crazy to think that gent is already that old and it's just getting super popular now.
Yeah, the origins of it, but it wasn't nobody knew the word gent until like probably, you know, 15 years ago, really. I mean, I think I want to say it was an interview with Frederick or one of the guys in Meshuggah where that whole word came out, like over 15, right, close to 15 years ago, you know.
And from what I heard, it was just a misunderstanding. Like they were asking him to describe his sound, and he's like, oh, you know, it's just kind of like gent.
Exactly. And here we are now. It's a genre, and people are arguing about it, you know. And yeah,
it's a de genre.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, but that was, and that we actually we were two of about 6 people in the mosh pit for Chaos Sphere. Everybody was waiting around for Slayer and Sick of It All, and I couldn't be bothered with any of that.
No, yeah, I remember there being no crowd when Meshuggah was about to start. We straight walked up to the front center of the rail, and we're looking around at everyone else like, why aren't you up here? Yeah. And then we wrestled over Tomas Hot stick, the pro mark. Indeed. Stick. Yeah, it was that thing where you're in the crowd, and then like there was about 10 people wrestling for this drumstick, and then I was getting more and more people off of it, and there was only one person still holding on, and I couldn't get it away from him. And I looked up, and it was you. And it's like me and you were the only two that still had our hands on it. And I'm like, oh, okay, you can have it.
Yeah. It's like, oh shit, it's one of us. Okay, we're good. I think that was one of those, either the Dream Theater or the Meshuggah trip down there. My car got broken into, and like my backpack stolen or something like that.
We had like parked and then taken the BART or something.
Yeah, it was something like that. But what a trip, man. Yeah, it's old times, good times, man. And then you know, subsequently it's just like those type of experiences. I mean, that was what was also interesting too, was while I was standing back there, were you backstage at that? Did you walk outside and stand out there and meet Meshuggah with me at that Chaos Sphere thing? Because I distinctly had the moment back there where I walked out because I didn't care about Sick of It All, and I was around the back door, and they're all guarding their gear at the back door waiting to load their stuff out because of the opening band. And I start talking to Frederick and maybe Martin, and was trying to, you know, ask them. It's like being a fan. Hey, you guys are awesome. And that's when James Murphy and Testament, like they were there to go see Slayer. They weren't there for Meshuggah. They were there late. They got there late, and they all went in after, like, and then that was the moment where
I don't think I recall any of that. I think maybe you had slipped out on your own.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I do remember meeting James Murphy, but I feel like that was after a Testament show in Sacramento.
Yeah, that was like, was that Bojangles or no? That's not Bojangles. It was it was like Roseville. Yeah, I remember that. That was gathering tour. That was
I remember getting one of these from James Murphy. He played the Green Tortex.
Yeah, that was a good show. It was cool to see him play live and see that band. That was with Lombardo too on drums. Just super fucking cool.
I hear that he's back in Testament now.
Yeah, it's been a revolving door. The Boss Staff has been in there, and Lombardo, and so many drummers in Testament, man.
Last time I saw him, it was Gene Hoglan.
Oh yeah, Gene.
That was a huge surprise. Like I didn't know that. Like show up the show ready to see Testament, and Hoglan's behind the kit, and I'm like, yes. That was already years ago. I forget how long ago.
Yeah. Well, I'll ask you a couple more questions. I'm interested in knowing, you've already covered some of your influences and like stuff that you're listening to lately. But like, I'm curious about like, what are some artists or maybe a player that you could turn the listeners on to that they might not know about that you're super stoked about?
Well, it was the big guns growing up. And then as, times get more current, metal is more and more splintered. And so there's just all these less popular bands now that are harder to discover. I would say in metal, the one that's really captured my imagination the most is Threat Signal. I mean, we're talking, in the last 10 years. And it took me a while to discover them because, there's so many similar sounding band names like Misery Signals and then Misery Index. Mm-hmm. And like, you start getting them all mixed up. But once I heard that Threat Signals Under Reprisal, it's so slamming. And it's got vicious vocals. The production is insane. And then their song structures, like they almost come out ripping the whole time. And then by the end of the song, it's gone completely melodic. And it gives you this palate cleanse that by the time the next song comes in slamming, it's exactly what you wanted to hear again.
It's mostly the first album, or is there other albums in their catalog that you'd recommend as well?
The newest one is acceptable. The second one is acceptable, but none of them can touch that first effort. It's miles above all the rest. Okay. When IXION started, it was, around 2005, 6. And the hot things at the time was the new wave of American heavy metal that they were trying to do. And that was
God and such.
Mainly Lamb of God. And I was totally into Shadows Fall as well at the time.
I forgot about that band. They're great.
And then I don't know if you can really include them, but I would kind of include Chimera at the time. I started getting way into Chimera at 2005. So I'd say those were my original IXION influences, was trying to kind of fit into that new wave of American heavy metal. But I was also just discovering black metal at the time too. Mainly Emperor and Dimmu Borgir. But yeah, as of late, Revocation has really captured my imagination. They're really creative. No two songs are the same. They're always taking crazy artistic different directions. Again, Scar Symmetry. The most amazing lead guitars, of course, with Pear. When I first heard Scar Symmetry, it just came on random on my Pandora tech metal station. And I kind of couldn't believe what I was hearing, because it was the first band that had such an extreme difference in their flavors of vocals. You had the pure death that was savage, but then the clean vocals were so clean.
Mm.
And at first it was too much for me. I'm like, I kind of don't want to admit that I like this. I don't know. It just seemed kind of like, at first I wanted to call it Disney metal in a way, you know, like that it's vicious, but then they've put this flavor on it that is trying to make it listenable or acceptable. And at first I'm like, just what? But now I've really come to appreciate that the dynamic of the harsh versus the melodic. And I think that the contrast just adds so much to the overall flavor that's really what I enjoy the most in metal right now is bands with a lot of contrast.
Interesting. That's cool. I mean, I feel like there was a time back in maybe band days that wasn't the case though. Like you didn't have that feeling of wanting that contrast. Like it was like more trying to make it more deadly and more heavy than it was being interested in that.
Yeah, in those times, I definitely, if I'd have had my way, Only Humans vocals would have just been death, just Carcass style, you know?
Yeah.
But that was before I really had written a lot of songs and maybe come to appreciate vocals in harder metal. I mean, of course, I love the vocals in like Alice in Chains and things like that. But it seemed like if you were going to be a hard band, there weren't really options. You know what I mean? You had to be all the way hard. Whereas now there's every flavor under the sun.
True. Yeah, man. Well, that's like, that's a pretty good widespread of influences and music to check out for sure. All those seem to kind of play into, you know, who you are as a musician. And I'm sure that becoming more of a vocalist over the years has shifted your perspective too, right? Like you probably appreciate the whole thing in a different light, I can imagine anyway.
Well, sure. Yeah. When I was just in our band, you know, I was really only concerned about my guitar parts. You know, I figure the vocalist will handle the lyrics. He'll handle the hooks. It was out of my realm. I didn't even need to worry about it. So then with IXION, you know, it's just been the process of writing a lot of songs, and you kind of see what works and what doesn't. And, you know, I would say that I've written over 100 songs now, you know, counting Only Human and just little things before that, all the 4-track stuff that we used to do.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of comes with experience too, being like, I realize now that this song would be better if it's got a great hook. You know what I mean? And you start to see things more from an overall perspective, seeing the whole song as opposed to just trying to ensure that you've got that wicked riff or a dazzling solo. It's with experience has come more perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of the ongoing issues with being a collaborator with anybody, and even with your solo project. You collaborate with somebody just to master, you're like, differences of opinions, and they don't see the whole picture the way you see the whole picture, or you don't see the whole picture like they see the whole picture, or whatever, you know, you see different parts of the picture. And, you know, I remember, you know, that was one of the concerns that, like, you know, Jeremy, you know, at different times, it was like he was the elder of the group, and we were like, he had already been in 10 bands by the time he started the band with us, and we're like, yeah, we're gonna do the thing. And he's like, you know, like I can just remember, even though he had his own things to realize too, but in a way I felt like a kid around him, because he had all the experience. He'd already been on tours. He'd already slept on shitty, disgusting carpets all around the country. Like we had yet to do that when we joined forces, so we'd only played a handful of shows around Chico and whatnot. And that I remember that being the biggest thing too, is like the first tour or so we did, where I was like, it was like so much work to go do that type of thing, and then so many variables, so many things can go wrong. Just like learning after a while, you're like, fuck, man, I step on my cord and unplug myself, when I'm trying to rock out, or that was more your thing. I was breaking strings left and right, like you could guarantee I was going to break a string, and maybe Ryan was going to step on his cord,
Yeah, I hadn't learned to loop it through my through my strap yet.
But that's like it's fun. Like we had to go do those things to have the perspective that we have now. And it's, I think I can kind of speak for both of us in the sense that we both really appreciate like where we're at with gear and where we're at with like experience as players and stuff now, like we can always grow, but like it's not, I look back at us then, I'm like, I'm proud of us that we stuck out as long as we did, and like paid all this extra rent and drove from way north Seattle down to south Seattle to practice for 2.5 hours and barely get stuff done, and then have to go back to our shitty jobs and do it all over again. And
it's just part of paying your dues though. And like I never felt bad about it. Like the whole time I just, whatever struggles or monetary struggles or getting no sleep, it felt like we were in the right place doing what we were meant to do. And it gives you so much pride, just feeling like I'm living my life chasing the thing that I love, and just nothing ever felt more right.
Yeah. I mean, I still think about that very first gig when we didn't even have a bass player at the Paradox Theater, opening up for Oddman, opening up for our friend Kale, he was on drums in that band at that time.
If I recall, we kind of killed Willhaven. We had so much energy, we just destroyed. And then they came out and they're like, we're going to have to headbang really hard.
It wasn't, I mean, we come to find out that band, I mean, they got good energy. I'm not talking shit about Willhaven, but like we were just different energy too,
Yeah,
like
it's true.
We were champing at the bit, and I still got a photo around. Oh yeah, actually I got a couple photos, and that was when I had a Jackson Kelly with the reverse headstock. Yeah, it was so cool, man. I mean, speaking of which, those are like guitars I shouldn't have got rid of. There's a couple of them, the Charvel and that one, and the old purple-ish Ibanez that I had for a bit, the 540. But
yeah, that's all tricky. That's always tricky because you can't keep all your guitars all the time. No. But you never know which ones you're gonna miss.
It worked out though. I got rid of all those guitars, and I'm surrounded by them now. So like, I could complain and feel sorry for myself, or I could play one of 20 guitars sitting right here that are all custom made for me. So
yeah, no complaints.
Could be worse. Yeah, man. Well, it's awesome to have you on the podcast finally. It's cool that like something that I mean, this podcast, I didn't even know I was going to do 100 episodes or any 50 episodes for that matter, because I didn't know if this was going to be fun or not, or if it was going to be endless work, and it's still a little bit of both. But it's super cool to have you on this podcast under these circumstances. And so phenomenal job on this album. And it's cool because I for me, as a fan of you as a human being doing good things in the world and following your dreams, it's like I can sit and I can very clearly remember starting to pass out at your old place out in the country while you were working on a Spawn, painting, and listening to Alice in Chains Dirt over and over and over again while you finished it, so that you could be in time for like turn it in like last minute or something like that to Slidey at the art department. And like I've got a very visceral memory of how high the Pepsi cans were stacked, bro. Like I'm clear about it, you know, like,
yeah.
And to think that, you know, we're still buds after all these years and we still love music and we still get to share a lot of stuff, even though our metal tastes are oftentimes a little different, but it's like, it's all a really interesting culmination in this album because, you know, I've been there for most of that stuff, you know, and most of the experiences, and, you know, it would, like, Dime would be proud, you know, like if he was still around, we'd roll around and be like, hey man, I know we were kids when we met you back in the day, but like, it's like, here, like, I mean, maybe you care, maybe he would just be stoked because, you know, we grew up and you really have taken it to task with this because it's also another level of just being willing to take on all the duties, man. And so, you know, you've come up in all the ways, and you've like officially put producer hat on in a different way, you know, like, so you have the ability to, you know, now transfer those qualities and those things that you've learned and grow those aspects in a different way and in future projects. So yeah, man, I'm super proud. I hope that anybody listening that's checking this out right now is curious, at the very least, will click over and check out Spotify or iTunes and check out Escalation of Arrogance by IXION, IXION. Right? Yes. Like I have to think about it, even though I know. And check out your Instigator Records website. What is it? Is it instigatorrecords.com?
Yeah, instigatorUSA.com.
Okay, instigatorUSA.com. So you can get like merchandise. You can get a really dope shirt like this there.
Yeah,
with bunnies.
Yeah, and that's where you'd want to buy the physical disc if you're old geezers like us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got some cool shirts on there. That hair metal one there you're watching, I just made out of clip art super fast so I could open my store. Like I did it kind of just as a joke.
Yeah.
And then everybody around me loved it and wanted it. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll make it available then.
So then you just make a few different versions, make a new, like version 2 and version 3 down the road. Like maybe, you know, there's another opportunity there. But yeah, man, it's been great hanging and talking about all the old times. We can definitely do it again at some point, especially when you have another project or whatever, man. It would be cool to pimp it out and get people listening to IXION and the Ryan Meranda solos and all that's the other thing. Do you added like some cool like sweep technique stuff going on in the I was listening for all the cool shit, but I know you could tell me better than I would remember, but I want to say it was in there's a bit in After Death or Golden Fire, and then later on in I don't know, Burn Trials, I don't remember, but I was just like that's the other part of it that is exciting, is that like there was cool lead playing on all the other stuff, but like you've like taken it up 5 notches on this one. So
yeah, I would agree. A lot of that is the NAMM influence and realizing I really needed to take it to another level.
There's more emotion and more technicality both in this effort, you know. So kudos, man. It's super dope. I
appreciate it. It's great to hear.
Yeah, man. Well, I'll close it here, but let's stay in touch, man. We'll talk real soon. And you know, everybody out there, go buy IXION merch and buy IXION album or download or stream on Spotify. And until next time.
Right on, man.
Players Pick Podcast, Picks and Perspective with Chrys Johnson. Pool table.
Players Pick Podcast is brought to you in part by our good friends at Dunlop Guitar Products, Kiesel Custom Guitars, and our favorite new coffee company, Road Roaster Coffee. Use coupon code PLAYERSPICK for 20% off your first order at roadroastercoffee.com.